Hey guys, welcome back to Hypnovision Studios. Today, I want to talk to you about the art of visualizing, and I want to give you a few examples along the way. But first, cue the graphic. This image is something that I created with ChatGTP. The idea that has been rolling around in my head for some time is simply breaking down words. The word author contains the word Thor, and we all know that Thor is the god of thunder, or is it lightning? So, what is happening in this image? We all know the scene where Thor is given the power of the hammer because he is worthy. I was thinking about that scene and decided to include a pen in place of the hammer. Why? Because our thoughts are electrical impulses, much like lightning. And when we speak from those electrical impulses, we give sound, thunder. So lightning is a thought, thunder is sound, vibration, let there be light. Or you could look at it this way. Those electrical impulses when we are writing is a form of manifesting. And the images or the mental pictures inside of our mind's eye is how we describe something from our imagination. So, that's pretty cool, right? Here's something else. When we start to break down words in relation to visualizations and imagination, how we can start to understand better what is happening behind the scenes. The word describe begins with DE. Why is that important? Because when we look at things like to deconstruct, decouple, or deveil something, it is the act of pulling away, taking apart, or lifting the veil to see what's behind the curtain. So by that means, it means to take away. So if I am describing something on the outside world, it is already manifest as a physical form. And I am trying to describe something I am visually seeing with my eyes. Now, if I'm using my imagination and my eyes are closed, I'm going to pre-describe or prescribe something from my imagination and then attempt to manifest that into reality in a physical form. That's very interesting. When we look at the definition of the word visualize, it is pretty simple, a mental image inside of the mind's eye. So how do we practice visualization or visualizing and start to sharpen that tool as part of our daily process? One of the biggest things that most people, including myself, when I started to really do this, I came to the understanding that visualizing is something that we do every day. Manifesting is something that we do every day. The law of attraction, the law of vibration, the law of correspondence, all these different type things are always at play. However, it is not in our awareness or our attention span that it is something that we are doing. So for me, when I started to learn more about this, and I've always been a person who was highly imaginative, but I was always the type of person that I couldn't read very well. So I was better to be hands-on. If I could take something apart, see how it works, then I would have a better understanding, and then I could use that as a template for other things. So for example, if you do woodwork, it's hard to do metalwork because it's a whole nother layer of trade that goes into metal work. However, if you do metal work, you can easily transfer that skill as a template over into doing woodworking. There is a bit of transferring that knowledge into a different application, but there is a template that we can use to pour that into something else. And that's what I'm going to try to help you with today. So one of the things that helps with visualizing is to include all 5 of your senses. So when we try to visualize something, let's do a live practice right now. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to try to visualize something and include all 5 senses. Let's just create a simple scene, and you can do this with me right now. Let's just picture the beach. We can feel the sand under our feet. We can hear the waves as they crash in. We can smell the salt air and we can feel the sunlight hitting our skin. Now, when we start to couple all these things together, we are starting to form a picture in our mind of the beach scene as it is. We are either sitting on a blanket or we are sitting in a chair. Perhaps we are walking barefooted down the shore. That is a simple visualization, and you can take this and start to practice with other things. When I started to do this, learning to sit still was probably one of the hardest things for me to do. That is another aspect of visualization that will take you to another level. For me personally, when I started to do this, it took me many months of forcing myself to sit still. It's very key because when we are going through our day-to-day lives, we are so wrapped up in so many distractions in the outside world. There's a saying, signal, not noise. So what is a signal? A signal is something of a communication, right? A radio station will send a signal out, and the receiver, the actual radio, will pick up the station or the signal that is being put out, and you are able to hear music or a program. So the noise could be like static, or these would be distractions that are distracting you from that thing that you visualized or the signal itself. It's very interesting when you start to look at things in a layered type conscious way and start to deconstruct and then start to prescribe a new route or a new way of visualizing something into your future. Now, one of the other things that you really have to have for visualization to work, and it's much like affirmations, is to allow yourself to feel. Now, guys, if you're new to my channel, I do hope that you like what you find here today. I have previous videos that are really wrapped around the feeling itself because it's so important to allow yourself to feel the visualization. If we go back to the beach scene, don't allow yourself to feel sunburn, but allow yourself to feel the radiant warmth of the sun on your face. Maybe even to hear the waves as they crash in, and perhaps the coolness of the ocean water on your toes. We could take that same template and put it as an example like this. I am on a raft and I can feel the ever so slight waves under the raft moving me up and down gently. So also within the body itself, to calm the emotions because they can become very chaotic. And again, if we are tied up in the outside world and all this happenings and things, then our emotions or energy is going to follow our focus. The saying that energy flows where focus goes is certainly true. And if we are able to allow ourselves to bring everything down into a still calmness, then our emotions are going to follow. And once that happens, we can start to formulate clear vision within our mental mind's eye. The imagination itself is the one true foundation of all creation, because you have to first imagine something before you can manifest it. And that brings me to something else. Everything in the world that is not nature made first came from man's imagination. Man visualized it and found a way to bring it into manifestation. Man, I confess this to be the truth, nothing but the truth as I know it. So I got a few notes here in front of me I would like to share with you. And I also have a few of my notebooks. So we'll dive into some of that stuff as we go along. But when it comes to visualizing, it is helpful to start with something small. Maybe an apple, maybe an orange, but the color, the texture, the size, the weight, maybe even how that apple tastes. The more that we practice things within our mind's eye and attach those to the sensory input. There's a saying in one of Neville Gollar's books about the awakened imagination is to deny your sensory input. What does that mean? Well, in the human condition, we have what is known as the outgoing and the incoming information or sensory data. So if we are out there in the outside world, we may not be paying attention to, let's call it our dashboard, our inner dashboard, much like a car, and the car has sensors, right? Modern cars have sensors on the bumpers to let you know when you're too close to another car in front of you in a parking lot. When you get too close, the sensor comes on. We can look at our attention span the same way. If we are externalized, we are not paying attention to that dashboard. We may not be paying attention to one of our sensory inputs giving off alarm bells. So our sensory input is both internal and external, meaning that when we don't pay attention to our own dashboard, we could easily run out of gas, and then we could find ourselves stranded. Our check engine light could come on. There's all kinds of things we could use in a metaphoric way or a symbolic way to understand and describe things that happen within the human imagination or the mental faculties. The sensory input is very important because when we start to deny the senses of the outside world, we are shutting off everything that is external to our point of view. Our point of view being what I am seeing is my point of view. Your point of view would always be from your first person view. Now, the whole idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes would be to imagine if you were that person, how would a situation make you feel? That allows you to give sympathy or to understand what someone else is going through, but that does not mean that you have to take on, inhabit that same energy. It is okay to feel bad for someone, but to carry that person's burden like it is your own cross is not part of the human experience that we were supposed to have. So the internal, external sensory input, there is a degree of difference in how that works. When we go into meditation and we pull our attention into ourselves and we start to visualize a scene and we start to feel that scene, we are generating that from the inside, and our sensories are giving us the vibration, the feeling, the texture. We are starting to experience it as if it is something that is happening really in reality. So the more that we practice this type stuff, it is much like the dancer becoming one with the music, or the football player, the basketball player who has sat around and visualized that game-winning shot or that championship game, and it is something that they have dreamed of all of their life, and then finally one day it happens. It's like a dream coming true. And that is really what is happening here, because we fantasize or we use our daydreaming for imagination, and then we experience that in our reality. Because what we put out, we will always get a reflection back. So our focus is really key to understanding how to use your attention span and to couple that with visualizing and the feelings. When we start to synchronize all these things into a cohesive order, right? The terminology ADHD would be to have an attention deficit, meaning I can't pay attention to myself because I have a deficit of attention because I am distracted to the outside world. And because I am distracted, my attention and my focus is out there, meaning the energy is going to follow where the focus goes. That is very interesting. So when we start to learn how to visualize, we need to really do our best in practice to engage all of the senses. Visualizing isn't just seeing, it's imagining with all senses. Imagine the scent of rain, food, or flowers. Imagine the touch. Visualize texture, rough bark on a tree, smooth glass. Sound, imagine a bell ringing or waves crashing. The more senses you use, the more vivid and realistic your mental images become. So again, guys, visualizing and affirmations have something in common, and that is allowing yourself to feel with all 5 of the senses. And I'll tell you a secret also. When it comes to visualizing, there's another aspect, and that is AI. AI requires the user to input in order for AI to be able to output. So those of you that understand computer logic, you understand this as basic input output. However, when you start to visualize the scene, you start to build a very complex picture in your imagination. Often the picture is probably bigger than something that could literally fit in your head. That's truly how powerful the imagination is in the first place. So if we can take that visualization and we can input that into AI, for example, if we want to create an image, then we would say, create me an image of a beach scene. I am sitting in a chair. I can feel the sand under my feet. The waves are crashing in front of me. The sun is shining rays down on top of me. I can smell the salt air. The more information that we are able to describe or prescribe to AI to generate an image, the better quality or the better likeness of that which you are visualizing is going to be generated as the output, input, output. Very interesting. I use this actually with my content here on YouTube and in other places. I've learned as I have been going with my YouTube channel and also using AI in different aspects that there is a close coordination with visualizing and being able to create prompts with AI that are very highly detailed. Now, I know a lot of people out there probably don't really care too much for AI. Maybe you don't even use it at all, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But for those of you that are wanting to try to get into different aspects of AI, or maybe you already are, visualizing is something that will take it to another level. So I created my my clothing store with using AI. Everything from signing up to the platform for Shopify to setting up the actual web store and creating a domain for it, and even all the logos on the site. I'll tell you a pretty simple way that I did this. With Shopify, I don't have to hold any stock. I don't have to print. I don't have to ship. I can sit there for 30 minutes and generate 15 to 20 different images and then take those images and spend another 20 to 30 minutes uploading those to Shopify and creating different shirts and different apparel. And then they are on the website and they can be sold. I can be sleeping and making money. I can be on vacation making money. So I created a whole nother stream of revenue for myself that doesn't require me to work a traditional 40-hour job for this particular stream of income. Same for YouTube. These videos that I'm making have had a dual purpose for me because I have been learning in the process while also sharing my journey with all of you out there. So visualizing is something that I've been doing all my life, and so have you. Using your imagination is something that you have been doing all of your life, but perhaps you were not really aware of the full scale of imagination. It is truly a wonderful thing once you start to allow yourself to feel and to visualize things that you wish to bring into your reality. Now, I'll give you an example of something. Back in 2022, 23, I created this. This is nothing more than a hand-drawn map, and it's kind of sketchy, but this was my first attempt at trying to figure out what was going on in my head, because at the time, I actually went along with the saying and the understanding of having ADHD. Now, when I was a kid, it was ADD. However, since the time of this drawing and 2 years plus of journaling, I no longer say to myself or even to others that I have ADHD. Actually, in my last video, I gave you an acronym for hyper attention direct drive or something along those lines. I may be mixing it up again, but it is all about the order, because one of the things with attention deficit is your thoughts are out of order. It is like a train wreck of the cars in the train being switched around and not making any sense when we try to form or formulate a coherent line of thinking. So if we take the word line of thinking and change that to a stream of conscious, then we start to really understand what it means to flow, or to go with the flow is to go with that stream of conscious. What happens when we are sailing down a river in a boat and we all of a sudden drop an anchor? Once that anchor hits the bottom and catches onto something, the boat is going to be stopped regardless of the flow in the stream. That flow is going to continue to go forward. However, now that the boat has dropped an anchor, it has stopped. And that is what most people do when it comes to events in their life. When things don't really go the way that they had planned, one of those things is feelings, right? When we're not paying attention to what we're manifesting, when we're not paying attention to what it is that we had thought into a form and then we took action into it, then when things don't work out, our feelings get hurt, we drop that anchor on that mistake, and we form what is known as regret. Also, with regret comes things like resentment, things like grudges, upset feelings, or wanting to get even or knock someone down. Those type things are real when it comes to human conscious. And it's not about shaming anyone here, guys. This is like truthful. These are actually things that any human at some point will experience in their life. So we can also use that same understanding, and I've done a video recently about the hypnotic anchor, which is a technique in psychology where we can rethink that concept of dropping an anchor in a stream on a mistake, and instead we can use something of the future that has not happened yet, because the future is not happened. Anything is possible. So now we can hook a feeling of a future event, bring it into the present. When we are sitting and visualizing in a meditation, we are experiencing things in our internal five sensory input that is happening in present time, even though the event is purely imagination. We are actually bringing something into the present moment from the unseen, which is imagination, which, by the way, is like magnets. You will attract in what is in alignment for that magnet. So the attraction, law of attraction, is pulling in through magnetism, or i.e. imagination. Very interesting. So you can practice as little as 5 to 10 minutes a day and work your way up to stuff that is bigger. I, for one, will share with you now my blue notebook, which started this channel, guys, by the way. It is a blue notebook, and my name is Nicholas, and you know, the Nicholas Sparks, the author, is not me, but I do understand what it's like to get a spark and an inspiration. So one of the things, you know, this channel is called Hypnovision, and the very first thing in this book is vision of my ideal life moving forward. And I just started writing, and I told myself that I would come back and read this later on and see if I got new meanings from things. But one of the things that I have wrote in here, in my future, I see myself connecting with people who share the same energy, love for life. They understand music and harmony, so when I share this vision, they will be able to see it and understand. My career vision with music is public speaking, and expression of life is as such. I see an A-team that is so aligned that we complement each other and we help fulfill dreams through many forms. And then I went on to write my first blueprint in this notebook. So fitting, right? The notebook is blue. And now here I sit almost 2 years or 2.5 years later with a YouTube channel, and I have 2 other streams of income, including a 40-hour day job. So you are much more creative than you give yourself credit for. Once you start to allow yourself to learn what meditation truly is. It's not about actively thinking about things. It is not actively praying. It is not actively doing anything. Meditation, in its truest sense, is learning to be still and know that I am, and the saying, as you already know, be still and know that I am God. In the silence is where we learn to manifest, because it is at those times when we are able to feel the strongest of the sensory input. We are blocked out from the outside world. It's just like the moments before you drift off to sleep. Your body and your mind start to have a disconnection. That is why some people go limp when they sleep, right? You could pick that person's arm up and let go and it would just fall, and they would be clueless either way. They wouldn't know what's going on. If you shake them hard enough, they'll start to wake up. Have you ever woke up in the middle of the night and felt paralyzed? I guess they call that night terrors, where people feel like something's holding them down. I've experienced that once or twice in my life, but it is actually when the body is in such a deep slumber. It is what is happening to the body is deep rest. That is when the body is doing repair work, the cells in the body, the different aspects of the organs. That's when they are doing their work for the following day. But when we are disrupted in our sleep patterns, the conscious and subconscious aspects of the brain have to reestablish that connection. And it's actually there for a reason, so that our physical body can get rest and rejuvenate. So there's a aspect of revitalization that is happening there. So the other thing that you can do is journal. Journal as much as you can, as often as you can. Journaling will help reinforce your memory, and it helps you to build descriptive power. It makes patterns or weakness more clear. Now, I use journaling for a lot of self-reflection, and I ask myself a lot of questions about myself, and not just about myself, but other things on the outside world. Is this true? How does this make me feel? How should I respond to this? And I've learned to slow down my response time a whole lot, because when we become highly reactive, it is like playing hot potato with energy. And if someone comes in all hot and heavy and they just throw something at you and you instantly respond and amp up and match that energy, you have been knocked off your square and responded in that same type energy. So allowing yourself to slow down, listen to what was said when that person comes in hot and heavy, and process. Because when a person is speaking, the mind is generating images. It is always generating images. And if we are impulsive, if we are externalized with our imagination, we will completely miss that dashboard or those sensory alarm bells going off. Hey, slow down. Hey, check your oil. Hey, your tire's going flat. Those type things, if we translate that to the five sensory input, is what I'm talking about, the internal dashboard. We can combine breath work. Breath work is one of the fastest ways to get into that meditative state, because when we focus on breathing, it interrupts the thought patterns of the mind itself. And when we focus on the breathing, we are doing what? We are bringing everything in, and we can start to go from breathing to doing a body check. We can allow ourselves to visually scan through our imagination our body. And what I learned was that there's a lot of different places in the body that hold tension. And once I started to visualize and started to meditate, I was able to learn what thoughts were creating tension in different areas of my body. One of the things I used to experience was a lot of pain in this temple. Now get this, it's the right temple. What does that mean? The right temple or left temple, when we look at the cross wire of the brain of the left and right hemispheres, I am a left-handed person. So logically, left-handed is logic and right-handed would be creative, right? No, that's not right. The left brain is logical and the right brain is creative. So If you're left-handed, then you would probably be more creative. If you're right-handed, then you're highly analytical or logical. So there's a cross-wire aspect that is happening here. So when you see things like learning to brush your teeth with the opposite hand, because it helps to wire new pathways, neural pathways in the brain. And the more that we can create new pathways in the brain, the more we are able to experience things that we've never experienced before. One of those things was a few years ago, I started to practice with my DJ equipment on the opposite hand. So when you see people like scratching, for example, I've always been left-handed, but use my right hand to try and scratch. My right hand is no ways as coordinated as my left hand. But when I switched hands and put this hand on a crossfader, I started to feel a little strange and weird using this hand on the platter. But what happened after a bit of practice for a few months, it started to take off, and I was doing way better than the previous 10, 15 years of me DJing combined. So I was able to ultimately become way better than I was before by simply switching sides. So there is a lot of truth to this. When we do things and we all of a sudden switch to the opposite side, it does cause the brain to fire new pathways, new neurons in the mind. The brain is neuroplastic, or has neuroplasticity, which means it is able to rewire itself. And that takes practice. And it takes a bit of commitment to be able to stick with it. That's probably one of the hardest things to do. Anything from visualizing to meditation to allowing yourself to feel and using affirmations and things like that require you to set aside time to focus on these things. And for me, being caught in the 40-hour work trap and the home life of being a father, the home life of being all these things to other people meant that I had very little time to myself. And I can almost 100% guarantee that if I say this, most likely you will feel the same way. A lot of people feel like the only time they have to themselves is when they go to the bathroom to take a poop. If you feel that way, then I honestly think that you would benefit from making yourself 10 to 15 minutes a day where you just block everyone out of your life and you spend a few minutes alone, solitude, or pick up a piece of paper and go sit outside and just allow yourself to empty out your thoughts, so to speak. And once you start to do that, you're getting rid of 90% of junk that is just a mind full of stuff. That's what we call mindfulness, is learning to clean out that closet of things that we no longer use. If we don't use it, what's the point in holding on to things that no longer serve purpose in our lives? So visualizing is a technique of manifestation, but is also something that can help you in your own life. Self-talk is another one. When we think about self-talk, we think about that internal monologue that we have in our head. As it turns out, that internal monologue is part of that imaging process. When we are seeing things in the outside world, our mind is trying to describe it so we can understand what it is we are seeing, what it is we are smelling, what it is that we are touching, what it is that we are hearing. All of those signals are being converted into matter, and then we experience it in real time. So when we go into that meditative state, instead of describing what is in the outside world, now we are prescribing. And one of the last techniques I'm going to share with you all is the movie screen technique. Imagine a blank screen in your mind, like a movie screen, that you can project images onto. You can zoom in or zoom out. You can change the perspective, add motion or detail. You are literally the director of that said movie. You are also the main character of that movie. So, as the main character in that movie and using your visualization techniques, you don't want to play roles that would not be beneficial to your life. So, roles like the anti hero, roles like the victim, or roles like the person that goes around and gets revenge on people. If we are visualizing and using a movie screen technique, then we want to visualize how things are always working out for our favor. We want to visualize positive things. Everything works out for me. I'm so happy and grateful. I feel the emotions of gratitude. I am the star in this movie, but this movie is not about me. I am a character in this movie, but there are so many other supporting actors in this movie that I am visualizing that help create the story arc, create the texture and the flow of the movie. And doing it like that, we start to take charge of that self story. Now, I'll take it all the way back to the very beginning of this when I shared the image of Odin with the pen. So we can create and become the author of our own self story. We can start to close out scenes that no longer serve us. Parts of that self story we can allow to dissipate, or as a author would, we could wrap chapters up, which would be closure. I'm going to end this chapter of this part of this story. I no longer desire to be a victim or victimized in any form, fashion of any story. I will not allow someone else to put me in that role of being a victim. I will not allow myself to write myself into a story where I am a victim. So, using these as examples, you can start to see what I mean when I say be the author of your own story through imagination, visualization, self-talk with affirmations, and allowing yourself to feel it. And that, my friends, is the ingredients to change your life. Nothing on the outside of you from your point of view will change until you change on the inside, and then the reflection will start to change. Now, what most people don't tell you is that there is a transition period. When you go through a major change on the inside, there is going to be a misalignment as things have to reformulate and start to reflect back what it is that you have changed. You may lose a few friends. You may even lose some family. And it may just be temporary. It may be long term. But that's things that they don't tell you is the alignment of those reflections. Because up until some point of not being aware of that self story that you're telling yourself and becoming aware and starting to change it means that whatever roles people on the outside of you have put you in through their own self story has to change. You can no longer show up and be in that role for that person if you are starting to write your own life story. There are times where people will emotionally manipulate you or use you, and when you have changed that story, they can no longer do that. So you might experience some tension, but don't become discouraged. Don't allow those things to stop you. I recently read when you leave a family system that has been a part of your life for a very long time, and this is especially true when it comes to different religious beliefs, that once you change your viewpoint, then there are going to be some that secretly, silently wait for you to fail and come crawling back. Especially when it comes to religious thinking, religious beliefs. I knew you would be back because you need Jesus in your life. Well, everyone has their own point of view. Everyone has their own relationship to what Jesus means to them. There is not a one size fits all in this scenario. And once you start to understand that the universe and God is in everything and there is nothing that is not, then do you really need to have that savior aspect built into your self story. Because if you look at the underlying root of that complex, there is a victim mentality that is associated with the story. Now, you can take Jesus and put it out of the picture and put person A or person B. It doesn't matter. If you start to look at the story itself, look at the arc of the story, look at the psychology of the story, you can start to see where if you feel like you need to be saved, you are giving your internal self-story power to someone on the outside of you. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need Jesus or that you can't benefit from the teachings of Jesus, because you absolutely can. I'm saying that have the same faith and the same boldness that Jesus had, and the saving part will take care of itself. It will work itself out in your favor. There's the other aspect of this, and that is the emotions, right? I talked earlier about dropping an anchor in a stream. The boat stops moving, but the stream goes forward. So emotionally living in the past while the body is physically in the present creates distance between emotion and the physical present moment. So by this understanding, we start to understand what it means to be emotionally unavailable, because you can be looking at a person, right? But they are not emotionally available because they are living somewhere else emotionally. So they are emotionally cold, emotionally unavailable. And the focus is telling you where their emotions is. It's not in the present moment. So when we start to understand a lot of this stuff, we can start to break the mind free of the old patterns, the old thinking, the old ways of doing things. And we can start to look into the future, which is abundant, has not happened, and we can start to pull those things in through attraction and bring them into the present moment. And then when we let go, guess what? We're going to start moving in that direction. Those two things are going to start to move towards each other. The future and the present are going to meet each other, and we are leaving the past behind. Even though our memories will remain, the feeling and emotions of things of the past that we were holding on to, regret, shame, all these different type things start to dissipate like in the rearview mirror. And that is something that is truly amazing, to be honest. It's taken me some time for myself to get to the point where I've been able to say a lot of these things on camera. A lot of people who do YouTube or do different types of content, it may seem easy for certain people to be on a camera, but behind the scenes, a lot of times there is a lot of personal challenges that one must overcome to become comfortable on camera, to become very fluid with being able to speak for long periods of time. It is something that also comes with visualizing and learning to sharpen your imagination, because anything truly is possible when you start to learn and use these techniques within your life. And with that, guys, I will see you very soon. Make sure you drop some comments and share with a friend, and start visualizing today and change your life for the better.